My name is Logan Miles, and I've always believed I had a pretty high tolerance for discomfort. I've worked double shifts in midsummer heat, eaten burnt lasagna just to make someone feel appreciated, and smiled through awkward conversations with relatives who never learned boundaries. But that night, 3 months ago, sitting in the Winslow dining room with crystal glasses glinting in fake candlelight and the scent of imported vanilla candles fighting with overpriced beef Wellington, I learned there are limits to patience. Real limits. Delora Winslow, the matriarch, the tyrant in a pearl necklace, tilted her wine glass with a soft swirl, the deep red clinging to the sides like blood in a storybook. Her voice was velvet over ice as she said, "Your parents don't belong at this wedding." She didn't even look at me as she said it. No, her eyes were fixed on her vintage Bordeaux, admiring it like it had just told her a juicy secret. I've already invited a few of my closest friends to take their seats. I blinked. At first, I thought I had misheard. That maybe, just maybe, she had said it in jest. But the thing about Delora is she doesn't joke. Not unless it's cruel, and even then it's always coded in something resembling manners. I glanced at Jasmine, my fiancée. Her face was frozen like a still frame. Shoulders tight. Fork hovering over a piece of salmon that had long since gone cold. She didn't speak. Didn't protest. Didn't so much as exhale in my defense. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't the first time Delora had said something like this. It was just the first time she said it in front of me. I let the silence stretch for a beat longer than comfortable. Then I set down my fork slowly, folded my napkin over my lap, and looked Delora directly in the eye. "Perfect," I said with a calmness I didn't feel. "Neither do you." There was a split second where even the silverware seemed to stop clinking. Her eyes narrowed just enough to confirm she'd heard me, but not enough to betray surprise. No, Delora didn't get surprised. She got offended. Strategically. "Excuse me," she said, her voice as soft and dangerous as a snake in silk. "No, I heard you just fine," I replied, keeping my tone even. "If my parents don't belong at their son's wedding, then neither does the woman trying to erase them from it." Jasmine still hadn't moved. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. And I knew, with a heavy sinking clarity, that this moment wasn't just about dinner. This wasn't just one disrespect. This was the accumulation of many side comments, backhanded compliments, the way Delora always insisted on hosting but never asked what I wanted on the menu. The way she rolled her eyes when I mentioned my mother's name like it was embarrassing to admit we'd come from different zip codes. "This is a private affair," Delora continued, recovering quickly. "There are optics to consider. Seating arrangements. My friends from Glenwood expect a certain experience, and frankly, it reflects better on Jasmine if my parents disappear." I asked, not even trying to hide the steel in my voice now. "If the people who raised me and loved me without a checklist are hidden so your florist friends don't have to sit next to someone who works with their hands?" She pursed her lips. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the way she weighed every word. She wasn't emotional. She was political. Jasmine finally stirred beside me, setting her fork down with a gentle clank. "Logan," she said, her voice low. "We can talk about this later." But there was no later. Not for this. This was the kind of wound that didn't close neatly. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the marble floor, making the kind of sound that always draws attention in these pristine, curated spaces. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a tantrum. I just met Delora's eyes and said, "You've made your priorities clear. I just wanted to make mine clear, too." Then I turned and walked out of that dining room, past the china cabinet filled with crystal goblets no one used, through the hallway lined with curated family portraits that featured only Winslows, past the spotless white foyer with shoes arranged like museum pieces, and out into the chilled evening air. The second the door shut behind me, I felt the pressure leave my chest. Not relief, not yet, but air. Actual, breathable air. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and stared at my reflection in the windshield. There was something about her tone that night. Something about the way Jasmine said, "We can talk later." Like this wasn't a deal breaker, like it was just another item on the planning checklist, next to floral arrangements and seating charts. That was the moment it truly hit me. Jasmine might love me, but she wasn't ready to stand with me. Not against her mother. Not for the truth. And that meant she wasn't ready to stand beside me at all. I didn't go home right away. I drove. No direction, no destination. Just me, the hum of tires on pavement, and the sting of clarity unraveling everything I thought I'd built with her. I thought about my parents, Ruth and Howard. who had spent their lives doing thankless work and never once asked me to be ashamed of them, who would have sat in the back row if it meant seeing me happy, who would have worn suits from the discount rack with pride because they were there to celebrate me, not impress strangers. And now, they weren't even invited to the front because their last name wasn't Winslow, because they didn't sip wine and talk about hedge funds. I finally pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, the kind with flickering neon signs and cracked vinyl booths, and ordered a coffee I didn't really want. I needed time. I needed space to think. But most of all, I needed to remember who I was before Delora tried to rewrite my script, before Jasmine let her. And as the waitress poured me a refill and offered a slice of pie on the house, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to marry into a family that erased mine, no matter how fancy the invitations were. The drive back to my parents' house felt longer than usual, even though it was only 20 minutes. The kind of 20 that weighed on you like bricks strapped to your chest. The roads were familiar, lined with modest brick homes, gas stations I'd known since I was 15, the corner store where my dad once bought me ice cream after a Little League loss. But that night, everything felt foreign, as if I had stepped out of a glossy magazine spread and back into something real, something unpolished, something I now realized I missed. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder the closer I got, not out of nervousness, but out of guilt. I was about to tell two of the most generous people I've ever known that they were, apparently, not good enough for the wedding of the son they raised. The porch light was on. My mother always left it on, even when she knew exactly when I'd arrive. She said it was habit, that a light should always be waiting for family. I stood there for a second before knocking. I still had a key, but this wasn't a moment I could barge into. My dad opened the door, eyes tired but warm. "Hey, son," he said, stepping aside to let me in. My mother was in the kitchen, half watching a baking show and folding laundry at the same time. She looked up and smiled, the kind of smile you don't realize you miss until you've gone too long without it. "You hungry? I made the chicken you like." I sat down at the table and stared at my hands. I hadn't even realized they were trembling a little. "I need to tell you both something," I said. My voice was steady, but my chest felt tight. My dad joined me at the table, setting down his coffee mug. My mom turned off the TV and took the seat across from me, hands still holding a damp dish towel. "You're not wanted at the front table," I said. I didn't sugarcoat it. They deserved honesty, not diplomacy. "Delora, Jasmine's mom. She's replacing your seats with her friends." Jasmine didn't stop her. The words hung in the air like smoke. My mother didn't blink. She just nodded slowly, pressing the towel into her palm like it helped her stay grounded. My father leaned back in his chair, exhaled, then said the one thing I didn't expect. "Better now than later, son." That was it. No outburst. No raised voice. No, "How dare she?" Or, "We always knew she was trouble." Just quiet acceptance. And that made it worse, because they had always braced for this moment. They had always known, somehow, that the woman I loved wouldn't fight for us. That she might love me, but not enough to protect where I came from. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. My mom finally looked up, her eyes glossy but steady. "Don't be sorry for us," she said. "You're the one they're trying to change." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional creak of floorboards above me. This house had its own rhythm, its own memory. My dad's boots by the door, my mom's cookbooks lined up by the fridge, the faint smell of lemon cleaner. And here I was, 32 years old, trying to untangle my heart from the reality I'd spent the past year trying to build with Jasmine. I loved her. I still did, in some deep corner of myself. But love with conditions isn't love. And the condition was clear: be ours, not theirs. Trade comfort for polish. Trade your roots for reputation. I remembered the first time Jasmine came to this house. She'd worn all white, even though it was raining. Said she liked bringing light into places. My mom cooked her favorite pasta after asking 3 different times to be sure. My dad cleaned the gutters that morning because he didn't want any leaves falling on her Lexus. And Jasmine had smiled and been polite and asked for sparkling water like it was just expected. After she left that day, my mom asked, "She nice? But is she kind?" At the time, I brushed it off, told her not to read into things. But now I heard that question loud and clear in my head. I sat up on the couch sometime around 3 a.m., phone in hand, staring at Jasmine's contact photo. We looked good together in it, our smiles wide, our bodies close, like we belong to the same world. But the truth was, I came from hardwood floors and hand-me-down furniture. She came from chandeliers and curated Christmas photos. I don't blame her for that. What I blame her for is silence. For choosing her mother's pride over my parents' presence. For not standing up when it mattered. I typed a message and erased it. Typed another one. Erased that too. What was I even trying to say? I'm hurt. I'm angry that I saw everything clearly now and wished I hadn't. There was no message that would fix this. No sentence that would undo the insult. Around dawn, I finally fell asleep on the couch, half sitting, half curled up with the ache of everything unresolved sinking into my chest. My mother was already up when I woke. She was packing a lunch for my dad, leftover chicken, some cornbread, a thermos of coffee. She didn't say anything, just handed me a mug and sat beside me with that same patient look she'd had the night before. "You're a good man, Logan," she said after a while. "But sometimes, loving someone means knowing when to walk away, especially when they make you choose between the people who made you and the ones trying to remake you." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My dad came down in his work shirt, kissed my mother on the cheek, nodded at me with a soft morning, and left with his thermos. A man who fixed pipes and never complained, who spent his life making things work, even when they were broken. And here I was, his son, finally realizing that not everything is meant to be fixed. Later that day, I stood in the backyard, watching the wind move through the leaves. Jasmine hadn't called. She hadn't texted. Maybe she was waiting for me to come around. Maybe she thought love would make me swallow my pride, that I'd apologize just to keep the wedding train on track. But love without respect isn't love, it's performance. And I wasn't performing anymore. I looked up at the sky, gray but honest. And I decided, right then, that if Jasmine couldn't see the value of where I came from, then maybe she didn't deserve where I was going. The sunlight slanted through the blinds like it had no idea what kind of decision I was about to make. It was still early, the kind of early where the world hadn't decided what kind of day it was going to be yet. My phone sat face down on the kitchen counter, vibrating softly every few minutes with reminders, venue confirmations, a text from Jasmine about cake samples, something from the suit rental place. It all felt like static, like someone else's life was happening around me, and I was just standing there with a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. I hadn't slept much. When I did finally doze off, my dreams felt like traps. Jasmine in a wedding dress, standing at the altar alone. My mother in the back row holding a bouquet she didn't want. My father adjusting his tie like he'd worn the wrong thing. Dolores sipping champagne and saying, "It's best this way." I woke up with that phrase echoing in my head like a gavel in a courtroom. And that's when I knew, really knew, I couldn't go through with it. I stared at my phone again. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say in the shower, in the mirror, even in my head while brushing my teeth. But when I finally picked up the phone and dialed Delora Winslow, it still felt like trying to confront a storm in a teacup. The line rang twice before she picked up. "Logan," she said, voice clipped and alert like she already suspected something was wrong. "To what do I owe the pleasure this morning?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "You were right," I said evenly. "This should be your perfect day." A pause. Just long enough for her to register a win. I could almost hear the smirk forming on her face. "I'm glad you've come around," she said. "It's a matter of clarity, really. Weddings are about presentation, and let's be honest. That's why I'm withdrawing from the wedding. Entirely." There was silence on the other end. The kind that stretches and snaps like a rubber band. "I beg your pardon," she said, the edge in her voice hardening. "You can't just—" "I just did," I replied, already opening my laptop to begin sending out cancellations. "You made it clear this wasn't about love or respect or family. It's about image. And I'm not here to enhance yours. This is absurd. You're making a decision based on emotion. You'll regret this." "No," I said calmly. "I regretted staying quiet too long. This is peace." I hung up before she could spin it. Then I stared at the wedding spreadsheet Jasmine and I had built together over the past 8 months, row after row of vendors, guests, deposits, RSVPs. I deleted the whole document. Gone. Like cleaning out a house you thought was yours until you realized the foundation was cracked. Then I moved on to the calls. I started with the officiant, a kind woman named Reverend Haynes, who had asked us thoughtful questions about love and values during our planning session. "I'm so sorry, Reverend," I said. "The wedding is off." She was quiet for a moment. "That takes courage, Logan." I hope you're doing what brings you peace. I am, I said, and for the first time that morning, I meant it. Next was the jazz band. I had picked them myself. I remembered the lead saxophonist, Otis, telling me how rare it was for the groom to care about music selection. Respect, man, he had said. Most guys just say, whatever she wants. When I told him we wouldn't be needing their services, he sighed. Sorry to hear it. You seemed like the one who wanted everyone dancing, not just clapping on cue. Thanks, Otis, I said. Keep the deposit. Consider it my apology for the short notice. I called the bakery last. The woman on the other end had a voice like powdered sugar and warm cinnamon. You're the groom, right? The one who liked the buttercream with the orange zest? Yeah, I said, but I won't be needing it anymore. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You sure? Very. She hesitated, then lowered her voice like she was letting me in on a secret. Honestly? You're not the first to call this week. It's wedding season, but it's also wake-up season. That one stayed with me. Wake-up season. After the last call, I stood in the center of my living room surrounded by silence. No ticking clock. No TV. No hum from a refrigerator. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I knew I'd done the right thing. Not the easiest thing. Not the thing people would understand right away, but the right one. I picked up the phone again and dialed my parents. My mom answered on the first ring. Hey, sweetie, can you keep next Saturday open? I asked. We're having a celebration. Just not that kind. She didn't ask questions. She didn't press. She just said, we'll bring the potato salad. I sent a group text to my siblings, my sister Layla and my younger brother Jeremiah. Told them I had something better planned. A celebration that actually meant something. No formal wear. No caterers. Just us. Family. Food. Music. Real joy. Within minutes, they were texting back. About time, Layla said. I never liked her eyebrows, Jeremiah added. I laughed harder than I'd laughed in weeks. That afternoon, I drove over to Hamilton Park. It wasn't much, just a big open space with worn-out picnic tables, a creaky swing set, and an old oak tree in the center, but it was ours. I walked the grounds like I was scouting a film location. I could already see the tables draped in mismatched cloths. My Uncle Jonas strumming his guitar on the grass. My cousins chasing each other barefoot. My mom dancing barefoot herself, plate in hand, laughing with her head thrown back. This was what love looked like. Not carefully arranged centerpieces and assigned seating charts designed to exclude. This was roots. This was rhythm. This was home. I sat on a bench and let the warm breeze brush over my skin. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. No more pretending. No more compromising my soul to keep someone else's illusion intact. I wasn't running. I was returning. To where I belonged. To who I was. And to the people who saw me clearly from the very beginning, before the guest lists and wine tastings and ivory napkin debates. The wedding was off. But something better had already begun. We didn't have a planner, a budget breakdown, or a seating chart. We had folding tables, 3 crockpots, my cousin's Bluetooth speaker, and more heart than any wedding Delora Winslow could have orchestrated with all her gala funds and guest list curation. The plan was simple. Show up, bring what you can, and let love fill in the rest. No tuxes, no corsages, no place cards with calligraphed names. Just us. Hamilton Park had always been a spot full of quiet memories, Sunday picnics, frisbee games, the time Jeremiah broke his arm trying to climb the oak tree because Layla bid him $5. But that Saturday, it transformed into something entirely new. Something sacred. I arrived early, just after sunrise, with 2 folding chairs and a borrowed canopy, still reeking of basement storage. My mom and dad were already there, my mother unpacking potato salad and baked beans with the efficiency of a woman who'd hosted every family reunion since 2002. My dad was wrangling a rusty barbecue pit into place, his jaw set with that familiar, quiet determination. No complaining, just doing, just showing up. You sure you want it under the tree? My dad asked, pointing with his chin. Yeah. He cracked a small smile. Didn't know you remembered that. Hard to forget a photo that's framed in 3 different rooms of the house, I said, and we both laughed. One by one, they came. My siblings with their kids, arms full of Tupperware and secondhand decorations. Layla brought a big red sheet she turned into a makeshift banner. Love, no permission required. Jeremiah, as chaotic as ever, showed up blasting old-school R&B from the car with a cooler full of soda and a grin that said, let them talk. My Aunt Sharon brought peach cobbler so sweet it should have come with a warning label. Uncle Jonas, my mother's younger brother who'd once toured with a blues band, sat on a picnic table tuning his guitar, nodding at people like he was born for this kind of day. We didn't have a schedule. We had rhythm. Around midday, the lawn was full, laughing children chasing bubbles, folks dancing barefoot to Jonas's chords, my dad flipping burgers with a spatula that had seen better days. Someone strung up fairy lights from the branches. Someone else started a group game of charades. I stood in the center of it all, watching, heart full. No forced speeches. No tension. No waiting for someone to say the wrong thing. Just joy. Organic, loud, sun-soaked joy. Aubrey, my cousin who ran her own little video company, brought her camera gear and set up without being asked. She captured everything. The laughter, the hugs, the way my mom wiped her hands on her apron to hug every person who arrived like they were her own. She found the moments that mattered. At one point, she pulled me aside. I hope you don't mind, but I'm cutting together a short edit for socials. The world needs to see what this kind of love looks like. I shrugged, smiling. Sure, just don't get my dad yelling at Jeremiah about the grill. Oh no, she grinned. That's going in. The sun dipped lower, casting gold across everyone's faces. That was when Layla handed me a small box. Open it, she said, nudging my arm. Inside was a photocopy of our parents' original wedding photo, the one under that very oak tree, my mom in her ruffled dress and dad in a too-big suit grinning like he'd won the lottery. Beneath it, a new photo. Me and them. Same tree. Different era. Same kind of love. Thought we'd remake it, she said. Only felt right. I didn't know I had tears in me until I blinked and saw the blur. That photo meant more than any engagement ring ever had. It was real. It was earned. It was us. Meanwhile, across town, I imagined Delora standing in her grand venue with rows of empty chairs, confused guests, and a staff trained to hide panic under polished smiles. I imagined her explaining, carefully, that the groom had an emergency or postponed for personal reasons. I wondered if Jasmine cried, or if she simply stood there, stiff in her $1,000 gown, wondering how the story flipped so fast. But I didn't let my mind linger there long. Because here, under this sky, among these people, I wasn't missing anything. I was full, whole, complete in a way I hadn't been in months. And all it had taken was letting go of what was fake to protect what was real. We danced. I didn't even mean to, but when my uncle struck up, "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and my mom pulled me into the grass, I didn't resist. She laughed like she was 20 again, hip swaying, bare feet stomping into the dirt, eyes shining. "This," she said over the music, "this is how you start something." Even my dad cracked open a beer and danced with Aunt Sharon, and I caught them sneaking glances like teenagers. The kind of love that's not loud, but built. Every day, every season, every disappointment survived. By nightfall, the fireflies showed up like guests we didn't invite but welcomed all the same. The lights hanging from the branches glowed soft amber, and someone started handing out plastic cups of lemonade and sweet tea for a toast. My brother lifted his cup and cleared his throat like he was about to roast me, but instead, he said, "To Logan, who taught us that walking away doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it means freedom." Everyone clinked cups. I stood there, heart thudding, trying to find something to say. I thought of Jasmine, of Delora, of all the time I spent contorting myself to fit into a family that never saw me as equal. I thought of the weight I'd carried, the voice I'd silenced, and I thought of how light I felt now. "Thanks for being my real celebration," I finally said. "No cake, no vows, no tuxedos, but this is everything I needed." They cheered, and music resumed, and I danced with my niece, and I hugged my aunt, and I closed my eyes for a second, just one. And in that second, I made peace with everything I walked away from. Let the headlines say whatever they wanted. Let Jasmine rewrite the narrative if she needed to. I had the truth, and it was dancing right here in the grass. The video wasn't supposed to go viral. That was never the plan. Aubrey had just wanted to capture the moment, the warmth, the honesty, the laughter, because she said memories deserve something better than fading in a phone gallery. She posted it late that night, around midnight, from her small editing studio in her apartment downtown. A 90-second clip, no fancy transitions, no dramatic music. Just my mother wiping her hands on her apron to hug guests. My father laughing while Jeremiah tried to flip burgers and failed. Me, lifting my niece into the air under the oak tree. And the caption, simple but sharp, when your mom-in-law tries to replace your family at your wedding. So you replace the wedding. I didn't even know it had gone up until the next morning when my phone buzzed 6 times before I even reached for it. I thought it was a group chat or maybe some leftovers of the celebration still rolling in. Instead, it was chaos. Messages, tags, missed calls. Aubrey's video had caught fire. Not a spark, not a flicker, a full-blown wildfire. By 8 a.m., the clip had hit 200,000 views. By noon, it was past 1 million. People weren't just watching, they were commenting, sharing, stitching, reacting. Some called me a hero. Some said I dodged a bullet. One woman wrote, "My fiancé's mom tried the same thing. I wish I had the guts to do what Logan did." Another said, "We don't talk enough about classism wrapped in wedding planning." I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling in disbelief. There were side-by-side videos, mine next to other stories. Brides who canceled weddings over racist in-laws. Grooms who'd been erased from their own ceremonies by overbearing families. And all of them said the same thing. This man chose love that looked like him, not love that dressed itself in expectations. Aubrey called around 10. She sounded breathless, equal parts shocked and giddy. "I didn't think it would explode like this," she said. "But people needed it. You have no idea how many DMs I've gotten. Women crying. Men saying they finally felt seen. Logan, this isn't just about you anymore." It was surreal. Because a few days earlier, I was sitting in a dining room swallowing my pride while Delora Winslow dictated who counted as family. Now strangers from Atlanta to Toronto were sharing my mother's smile and my father's laugh like it was gospel. The video had cracked something open. A conversation. A reckoning. And Delora? She was no longer the invisible puppet master behind a gilded curtain. She was the unspoken villain of a story everyone suddenly knew. I didn't need to hear her name to know the whispers had reached her. I imagined her morning scrolling her tablet at the Glenwood Country Club, perfectly manicured nails tapping the screen as her face paled. Her carefully curated image was cracking under the weight of exposure, and she couldn't control the narrative because it wasn't in her hands anymore. Jasmine hadn't called. Not that day, not the next, but I saw she'd viewed the video. Her name popped up under the seen by list like a ghost passing through the room. No likes, no comment, just silence. The same kind that had surrounded her at that dinner table. The same kind that let disrespect settle in without resistance. My inbox was flooded, media outlets, podcast hosts, morning talk show producers. Everyone wanted a quote, a soundbite. The man who said no to classism. I turned down most of them. This wasn't a brand. This was my life. But I did say yes to one, an email from a small family-focused blog called Ties That Bind. Their editor, a woman named Carmen, wrote a personal message. "Your story reminded me of my father. Thank you for showing us that family isn't about the chairs you're given. It's about the people who never needed a chair to begin with." I agreed to a short interview over Zoom. Carmen was kind, soft-spoken, the kind of person who asked questions that felt like conversations instead of traps. We talked about the park, the food, the feeling of waking up after deciding not to sell yourself for a pretty photo. At the end, she asked, if Jasmine's mother hadn't said what she said, would you still have married her? I paused. I think, I said slowly, I would have married someone who was comfortable pretending. Pretending that my parents didn't matter. Pretending that compromise meant disappearing. And that would have broken me in a quieter way. Maybe it wouldn't have gone viral. But it would have been just as devastating. She nodded and thanked me. The article came out 2 days later. Simple. Honest. No drama. Just a headline that said, "Love isn't a table assignment." That line stayed with me. Later that week, I went to the grocery store with my mom. She was wearing her uniform shirt from the store she managed and trying to find the right brand of frozen waffles when a woman approached us, maybe mid-40s, with tears in her eyes. "Are you Logan's mom?" My mom blinked, surprised. "Yes." The woman smiled through tears. "Thank you for raising someone who knows how to stand up." My mom looked at me, stunned. I just shrugged. "I told you the internet remembers." And it did. It remembered not just the big gestures, but the small ones, the potato salad, the laughter, the way we rebuilt something out of nothing and called it celebration. It remembered that there are still people who value roots more than ribbons. That love isn't real if it has to erase where you came from to be accepted. Delora never publicly responded. But I knew from a friend of a friend that her weekly bridge group shrank. That her spa invites dried up. That people who once nodded politely now smiled with thin lips, and offered curt waves instead. No one wanted to be associated with the woman whose name became synonymous with exclusion and elegance gone cold. And Jasmine, she finally texted me. I didn't know it would go this far. That was all she said. No apology, no recognition, just damage control. I didn't answer, because by then, it wasn't about her anymore. It was about every father who sat in the back so his son could have the spotlight. Every mother who wiped her hands on an apron to hug a stranger. Every sibling who danced barefoot in the grass instead of walking on imported rugs. It was about what we choose to preserve when the world tries to trade authenticity for appearance. The internet remembered, and for once, it remembered the right people. The first message came through just after midnight. A single vibration against my nightstand, then silence. Jasmine's name lit up the screen. I stared at it without touching it, watching it fade, then glow again with a second message. I finally unlocked it and read them both. I've been thinking about everything. We'll throw your parents their own reception next weekend. Just for them. I read it twice, then once more, making sure I wasn't misinterpreting. But no, there it was. Their own reception. Like an apology bundled in a participation trophy. A do-over, like they were school children who hadn't made the honor roll but deserved a cookie and a sticker anyway. Not a correction. Not remorse. Just a consolation prize. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that wouldn't break something further. The silence, this time, felt louder than any argument could have. Jasmine knew what that meant. I wasn't entertaining discounts on dignity. I lay back in bed, one arm across my forehead, and stared at the ceiling. The room was dark but clear. I thought about the celebration in the park, the way my mom laughed with her whole body, the way my dad stayed on the grill for 3 hours because he wanted everyone to eat first. The kind of love that doesn't demand a separate table or a rain date. A love that shows up without needing a spotlight. The next morning, I woke to a different kind of message, an envelope on my doorstep. My name written in tight cursive across a stiff cream paper. No return address, but I didn't need one. I recognized the handwriting. It was the same looping perfection I'd seen on Delora's Christmas cards, her RSVP notes, the place cards she insisted on designing herself. Inside was a letter, printed and formal. It read like a business memo dipped in perfume. Dear Mr. Logan Miles, due to the abrupt cancellation of the upcoming nuptials between yourself and my daughter, Jasmine Winslow, and the substantial investments made toward the event, I am formally requesting reimbursement for associated costs directly linked to your former involvement. These include, but are not limited to, a non-refundable venue deposit, $8,000, catering commitments, $6,500. Floral arrangements already constructed, $2,750, and personalized invitations, $1,100. Please remit the total amount of $18,350 to the address below within 10 business days to avoid further legal discourse. Sincerely, Delora M. Winslow. I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. There was something so absurdly theatrical about it. Her putting her fury into bullet-pointed expenses, as if she were itemizing hurt and blame like tax deductions. As if classism and disrespect could be tallied and charged back like a faulty product. I placed the letter on the kitchen table, took a photo of it with my phone, then slid it into a drawer like a relic I might show someone one day when they asked how bad it really got. That afternoon, I made a copy. I stamped the word void across the letter in thick red ink and mailed it back. No note, just the one word. Final. Clear. Delora might have money, but I had boundaries. And this time, they weren't for sale. I told my parents about it later over dinner. My mom was stirring stew while my dad leaned on the counter, arms crossed, already shaking his head. She asked you to pay her back. My dad asked, incredulous. She said I ruined investments. My mom turned away from the stove, ladle in hand. She thinks a wedding is a stock portfolio? She thinks I'm an inconvenience with a price tag. They both laughed, dry, tired laughs. Not surprised, just disappointed. You did the right thing, my mom said. You'd be miserable trying to build a life where you have to invoice your soul every time someone feels slighted. That stuck with me. Invoice your soul. It was exactly what it would have been like. Marrying Jasmine under Delora's rule. That's for daring to be myself. Charges for loving my family openly. But the story didn't end there. The letter had been petty, yes. But it had also been a signal, a white flag wrapped in entitlement. Delora was unraveling. not with humility, but with bureaucracy. And when pride starts documenting its pain, it's because it's run out of weapons. Jasmine called that evening. This time, I answered. "Logan," she said softly, like saying my name might soften everything that had come before it. "I got your messages," I said. "And the letter." Her breath caught. She didn't tell me she was sending that. But you weren't surprised. Silence. "Jasmine, a separate reception? You think that fixes this?" "I thought it would be something," she said, voice tight. "A way to show we care. If you cared, you would have stopped her the first time. Not after the internet made it embarrassing." She sighed. "You left me at the altar, Logan." "I left before the altar," I corrected. "Because you let her push my family off the guest list like they were delivery drivers lingering too long. And you said nothing. You know how she is." "Yeah, I do. But I didn't expect that from you." Another long pause. I could hear her swallow. Could picture her standing in her apartment, eyes red, hand pressed to her temple like the problem was noise, not consequence. "I didn't want to lose you," she whispered. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "You gave me away." She cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just small, steady sobs. And I let her. I stayed on the line until the tears slowed. Until there was nothing left to say. And then I hung up. Because closure isn't always words. Sometimes it's knowing you don't owe any more explanations. That night, I watched Aubrey's video again. The views had climbed to over 3 million. The comment section was a living, breathing thing, stories, gratitude, strangers rooting for my parents like they knew them. And tucked between them were the ones that really hit me. Not the ones calling me a hero. The ones that said, "Thank you for reminding me I deserve to be seen." Dolores sent one more letter a week later. This one had no demands. Just a single line. "You'll regret choosing noise over legacy." I didn't reply. Because what she called noise, I called music. And what she called legacy, that was already dancing under the oak tree. I didn't even know a newspaper was working on the story until I saw the email sitting in my inbox one morning with the subject line, Wellington Post, request for interview. It almost didn't seem real. The Wellington Post was our city's most respected publication, something you read with a mug of strong coffee and your elbows on a Sunday brunch table. It wasn't a gossip tabloid or one of those clickbait digital rabbit holes. It was where people went for truth dressed in restraint. I clicked the message out of curiosity more than anything else. A journalist named Lena Boyd had written it. She explained that she'd seen the video from Hamilton Park and felt there was something bigger beneath the surface. Something deeper than a viral moment. Her pitch was short but intentional. "This isn't just about a canceled wedding. It's about the invisible cost of classism, the quiet grace of dignity, and how one family reminded us that love doesn't require permission to be celebrated." I read it twice, then forwarded it to Aubrey. Her response came back immediately. She gets it. I agreed to meet Lena at a coffee shop near the university campus. When I walked in, she was already there, flipping through a small notebook, hair pulled into a neat bun, glasses halfway down her nose like she saw the world clearer through curiosity than confidence. She stood when I approached, shook my hand, and smiled like this wasn't about a headline, it was about listening. We talked for an hour. She asked about the dinner at Dolores' house, about the moment Jasmine stayed silent, about the way my parents took the news without flinching. But more than that, she asked about the celebration itself. What it felt like to build something outside of expectations. To say no in public. To choose joy without a license or a dress code. When she asked about Delora, I didn't badmouth her. I just said, "Some people build tables with nameplates. We build them with extra chairs." She nodded, writing that down with a soft smile. That's the quote. The headline read, "A Family First, a park celebration that taught us all a lesson in class." Underneath it was a photo of my mother mid-laugh, a plate of food in one hand and her other arm around my niece. Another showed my father tipping his cap while flipping burgers. The story mentioned no names beyond mine. No Delora, no Jasmine, but everyone in Wellington knew who it was about. Lena was a pro. She didn't need to name the villain. She just elevated the heroes. The response was overwhelming. I got calls from former coworkers, old high school friends, even a retired teacher who remembered my dad fixing the school's water heater for free during winter break. My parents' grocery store saw an uptick in regulars asking if Ruth Miles was the mom from the paper. My dad, who had never cared about attention in his life, grumbled that people kept clapping him on the back too hard near the wrench aisle at Home Depot. But the part that stuck with me? The shift in Dolores' world. Apparently, her friends at the Glenwood Country Club stopped RSVPing to her luncheons. The woman who used to host charity auctions and garden parties with Olympic-level precision now had to cancel her summer soiree due to low attendance. One of the club staff, a guy I used to coach in youth baseball, texted me that she barely made eye contact anymore. He said, "It's wild, coach. She used to walk in like she owned the air. Now it's like she's borrowing breath." Jasmine's name surfaced again, too. Not publicly, no statements, no social media posts. But I heard things. A mutual friend reached out to say Jasmine had taken time off work and moved back in with her mother temporarily. That didn't surprise me. For all their dysfunction, Jasmine and Delora were wrapped in the same ribbon of image, presentation, propriety. Jasmine wasn't just reeling from the loss of a relationship. She was dealing with the fallout of a house of mirrors shattering. But what caught me off guard was the spin. Someone had started floating a different version of the story. "She's saying you left her at the altar," my friend told me. "That you blindsided her. That she was willing to compromise, but you stormed out." I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from walking, but from being followed by a lie too long. "She's saying it because it's easier," I told him. "It's neater to blame the ending than admit the beginning was cracked." People believed what they wanted to believe. Those who knew me didn't ask for explanations. Those who didn't weren't owed one. What mattered was that the truth lived somewhere other than just my throat. It had been printed, shared, immortalized. And now it was undeniable. I caught my mom reading the article again one night, glasses low, finger following each word. "You've read that 3 times already," I teased. "Still don't believe it's about us," she said softly. "We didn't do anything special. We just showed up." "That's the point, Mom," I said. "You showed up. That's what made it special." She closed the paper, folded it neatly, and set it in the drawer with old birthday cards and family recipes. "You made us proud," she whispered. "Not just for walking away, but for knowing where to walk toward." That night, I sat on the porch with my dad. We didn't talk much, just shared a beer, watching the sky turn violet. After a long silence, he said, "You know, people act like headlines or something, but they fade. This," he gestured toward the quiet house behind us. "This sticks." He was right. The claps, the comments, the cheers, they were noise, fleeting. But the kind of peace I felt now, the kind that comes when you choose your people, even when it's messy, even when it costs you comfort, that kind of peace had weight. And it wasn't going anywhere. Delora could keep her legacy. We had our story. And this one didn't need a headline to last. It was late afternoon when I heard about the fight. I hadn't seen Jasmine or spoken to her since the voicemail she left in tears. I deleted it without replaying it. Not out of spite, but because I knew myself well enough to understand that if I gave her sadness a second listen, I'd start rewriting facts. I'd start softening truths. And I'd already done too much of that in the months leading up to the wedding. The call came from Devin, a mutual friend who'd known us both since college. "You got a minute?" he asked, his tone low and hesitant like he wasn't sure how far into the blast zone I still lived. "Sure," I said, already bracing. "What happened?" He exhaled. "It finally blew up. Jasmine and Delora had it out. Full-blown screaming match. Some charity gala after-party. People heard them arguing in the coat room." I closed my eyes and leaned against the wall of my hallway. "What about you?" he said. "Your family." "The video. Jasmine said she was tired of defending her mom's decisions. She said it ruined the only man who ever made her feel safe." Those words sat heavy. Not because I hadn't believed Jasmine had feelings for me. I knew she had. But because feeling something and standing for it are two very different things. One is private. The other costs something. And for too long, Jasmine hadn't been willing to pay. She told her mom she finally saw it all clearly, Devin continued. Said it wasn't about the wedding. It was about control. About always bending until she snapped. "And what did Dolores say?" Devin snorted. "She told her she'd never survive without the Winslow name." Jasmine stormed out. I didn't know what to do with that. I felt a weird twist of sympathy against my better judgment. I could picture Jasmine in that moment, painted lips trembling, hands clutching her purse, heels clicking away down a marble hallway like she was trying to outrun years of denial. That image pulled something old in me, something that still wanted to protect. But I didn't let it drag me back. Not this time. 2 days later, the story started shifting again. I saw it first in a tagged comment under a repost of Aubrey's video. A woman I didn't know wrote, "Maybe you shouldn't have humiliated her in public. Left her standing alone like that." Another one. There's always two sides. She says he walked out without warning. It wasn't just whispers now. It was deflection, reshaped into sympathy for Jasmine. Some influencer even posted a clip in a full beat of faux concern. Weddings are emotional. Let's not villainize the bride. We don't know what she was going through. Except we did. We did know. She was going through a decision. Over and over again, she chose silence. She chose her mother's approval, her status, the comfort of neutrality. I hadn't asked her to fight my battles, but I had expected her to fight for me. Still, I didn't respond publicly. I didn't make a video. I didn't clap back with receipts or screenshots or emails. Because the truth didn't need a defense team. It had already spoken, and I trusted it to keep echoing in the spaces that mattered. But privately, it stung. To hear Jasmine was now telling people I'd abandoned her at the altar, conveniently forgetting that I had sat through dinner after dinner listening to her mother imply that my parents were unworthy, that I had tried, really tried, to be the bridge between our worlds, that I'd only walked away after the ground crumbled under my feet. My mom was the one who helped me let go of that pain in the end. One night, we were folding laundry together, and she noticed I'd gone quiet, hands paused over a towel. "She's changing the story," I said. "Of course she is," my mom replied, without judgment. "She has to. Otherwise, she has to sit in the truth." But why blame me? My mother folded the towel slowly, smoothing it with her palm like she was ironing something invisible. "Because it's easier to be a victim of abandonment than an accomplice to exclusion." That landed like a brick. She was right. Jasmine didn't want to wear the truth. She wanted to drape herself in grief that made her seem innocent. "She loved you," my mom said. I believe that. But she didn't love you enough to risk being unloved by her mother. And that's not the kind of love that sustains you, son. And that's what it came down to. Jasmine wanted both, the safety of my heart and the shine of Delora's spotlight. But when push came to shove, she stood still. And I had walked forward alone. One afternoon, I received a handwritten card in the mail. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it. Jasmine. Inside was a folded note, brief, precise. I finally said everything I should have said months ago. But I said it to her, not you. I know that's too late. I just hope you know I meant it all, the good parts. There was no apology. No request for reconnection. Just a slow closing of a door that had hung half open too long. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was free. And sometimes, the cracks don't need to be filled. They need to stay open, so the light can finally get in. It's strange how peace finds you when you stop begging for it in the wrong places. One morning, I walked into the community center to drop off a donation box for a holiday coat drive. And there she was, Talia. She was standing near a folding table, helping a kid zip up a puffy red jacket 3 sizes too big, laughing like the sound had nowhere else to go but out loud. She had paint flecks on her forearm, probably from the murals on the back wall. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that didn't try too hard, and when she looked up and saw me, she didn't flinch. She smiled. I didn't plan anything. Just walked over and offered her a cup of the lukewarm coffee I'd poured for myself. "You like your coffee burnt, or just bland?" I asked, holding it out. She took it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I like it honest," she said. That made me laugh. I didn't know yet that she taught high school art. That she worked on weekends with kids who had more questions than answers. I didn't know her parents ran a small repair shop 2 blocks over. But I knew one thing the moment she looked at me like I wasn't a question to solve. I was safe here. We kept seeing each other. At first in passing, at the farmer's market, the corner bookstore, a community movie night where she handed me a bag of popcorn and said, "Don't let the butter fool you. It's just charm." Then slowly, intentionally, coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into long walks that didn't need directions. And somewhere in all of that, I told her about Jasmine, about Delora, about everything. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't skip the messy parts. Just laid it out, like brushstrokes on a canvas. She listened without interruption, her eyes steady and patient. When I finished, she tilted her head and said, "Sounds like Delora didn't lose a son-in-law. She lost a mirror." I blinked. "A mirror?" "Yeah," she said. "You saw her clearly, and that's what terrified her. Most people spend their whole lives hiding behind people who won't look too closely." That stayed with me. It wasn't said to comfort me. It was just her truth, given like a gift without wrapping. The more I got to know her, the more I realized how different this was, how different she was. There were no games. No tests. When she invited me to dinner at her parents' house, it was over text. We eat at 6. No dress code, but if you bring cookies, you're family for life. I showed up with a half-dozen from the bakery down the street. Her dad met me at the door with oil-stained hands and a grin wide enough to fit the whole block. Logan, right? You like coconut pie? He asked. I nodded. Good. That's dinner. He was only half joking. Her mom was warm and straightforward. She talked to me like she wasn't trying to impress or investigate. Just understand. The conversation was casual, easy, about art and community events and who made the best barbecue in town. No one mentioned degrees or job titles. No one asked how I planned to elevate their daughter's future. And that silence? That was love. That was trust. After dinner, we all sat on the porch drinking sweet tea and watching the sky darken. Her dad handed me a piece of that coconut pie. It was incredible, sweet, flaky, rich with real cream and none of the pretense. How'd you meet Artalia? He asked. At a coat drive, I said. She was laughing with a kid like they'd known each other for years. He nodded like that made perfect sense. That's Talia. Makes everyone feel like they belong somewhere. And I realized that's what this was. Belonging. Not performance. Not placement. One night, as Talia and I sat on her couch watching a documentary on sculptors in Mexico, something she swore I'd fall asleep during and was totally right about. She paused it and looked at me carefully. Do you ever think about her? She asked. Jasmine. I thought for a moment. Not like I miss her, I said. More like I remember who I was around her. And how quiet that version of me became. She nodded slowly, tracing the rim of her mug with one finger. That's how I knew my last relationship was wrong. I kept getting smaller in it, shrinking to fit. I think I was trying to expand to fit hers, I said. Like stretch into a mold I never agreed to. She reached over and took my hand. Well, you fit here just fine. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't fireworks or violins. But in that moment, I felt something shift. A quiet knowing. That love isn't a stage, it's a space. And Talia? She wasn't just giving me space. She was making one with me. I used to think love had to come with a checklist, grand venues, fancy invitations, social validation. But what Talia and I had was built from something far more rare. It was built from acceptance. From eye contact that didn't flinch. From pie that didn't need approval from anyone's palate but your own. One evening, we visited Hamilton Park. The oak tree still stood, arms stretched wide like it remembered everything. I told her about that day, about my parents, about the barefoot dancing, and the makeshift banner. She smiled, then pulled out her phone and showed me a sketch she'd done, ink on watercolor paper, the tree in delicate lines, children playing underneath, and two parents at a grill, laughing. You drew this? I asked. She nodded. Based on Aubrey's video. I thought, if you ever forget how brave you were, this might help you remember. I held it like it was a relic. A piece of history captured by someone who saw me. Not the headlines. Not the heartbreak. Me. I kissed her that night under the oak tree. Not because it was romantic or symbolic or staged, but because I couldn't not. This wasn't about revenge or rebound. This was about restoration. And I knew then, I hadn't just walked away from the wrong person. I had walked into the right one. It was a Tuesday morning when I heard Delora had resigned from two charity boards. The Wellington Social Alliance and the Glenwood Preservation Guild. Not because she wanted to, of course. Those kinds of women never want to step down. They're cornered into it, wrapped in polite emails that start with "given recent attention" and end with "we thank you for your service." I didn't smile when I found out. Not out of smugness. Not out of revenge. It just confirmed what I already knew. Bad PR moves fast when the currency is curated perfection. It doesn't knock. It seeps in through cracks, uninvited and ruthless. The people Delora curated into her life weren't built for storms. They liked ribbon cuttings and charity brunches where applause was shallow but guaranteed. They liked image. And when her name started floating around with words like elitist, controlling, and disrespectful, they did what image-driven people do. They backed away without a word. They didn't need to understand the full story. They just needed the scent of scandal to touch her pearls, and they were gone. I never reached out. Never gloated. Never sent her the article or the comments or the 1,000 ways the internet peeled back her mask. Because that wasn't the point. My life wasn't some game I won. It was something I chose. And part of choosing it meant refusing to orbit the same people who once demanded I shrink. But Jasmine? She did try one last time. It was a voicemail. Long tired. Honest in a way she'd never been when we were planning our wedding. Her voice cracked halfway through, like she hadn't intended to say as much as she did. "I miss the way your family made everything feel real," she said. "It wasn't even about the food or the music or the video. It was how your mom looked at me like I already belonged. How your dad held my coat without being asked. No one's done that since." There was a pause. I could hear her sniffle. "Then, I thought marrying you would mean I got to keep all that. I didn't realize it meant I had to stand up for it, too. I wasn't ready." She didn't ask me to call back. Didn't ask to meet. Just let her truth sit there, soft and fragile and too late. I didn't respond. I let the message stay in my inbox for 3 days before deleting it. Not out of spite. Not because I hadn't forgiven her. I had. But forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means peace. And Jasmine wasn't asking for another chance. She was asking to be remembered as something better than the way it ended. I could grant her that. Quietly. Privately. 2 months had passed since the park celebration, and life had settled into a new kind of rhythm. Talia and I weren't rushing anything. We didn't call it fate or forever. We called it now. A now built on steady conversations, honest laughter, and the kind of affection that doesn't try to impress. She started leaving sketches around my apartment, taped to the fridge, slipped inside books I hadn't finished, tucked between folded t-shirts. Each one was a slice of something real. Her dad fixing a carburetor, my mom's hands in dough, kids laughing under a mural she'd painted on the rec center wall. She didn't tell me she loved me. Not yet. But she showed me. In every brushstroke. Every question she didn't rush me to answer. One evening, we visited my parents for dinner. My mom made her red rice, and my dad bragged about getting an extra half-day off work because even the boss needs a break sometimes. Talia fit in like she'd always belonged. She asked about their wedding photo. The original one. My mom pulled it out, and Talia studied it like it was a painting at a museum. "You both look so sure," she said. My mom laughed. "We weren't. We just knew we'd figure it out together." That stuck with me. Maybe that was the difference. Delora's world demanded certainty before commitment. My world, our world, was built on trust and figuring it out together. After dinner, we sat on the porch again, just like the night after the article had run. The same cool air. The same creaking swing. My father handed me a folded piece of paper. "From your Uncle Jonas," he said. "Said he wrote you something." It was a short poem, handwritten with uneven lines. "Some build castles made of gold. Others build with stories told. You built yours beneath a tree, with hands that loved you quietly." I folded it and tucked it into my wallet without a word. The next morning, I saw a headline pop up. "Former Wellington socialite quietly steps down amid controversy." No name mentioned. No photo. But the city knew. The people who needed to know already did. Delora had finally cracked, not in a public explosion, but in the quiet erosion of the power she thought was untouchable. And me? I was nowhere near it. No statements. No interviews. Just moving. Letting the mirror crack doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you stopped polishing an illusion that was never yours to hold. Delora wanted reflection, not relationship. Jasmine wanted comfort, not confrontation. But Talia? She wanted truth. Even when it was messy. Especially then. And so did I. We were at the park again, one late Saturday afternoon. Families were gathered under the oak tree. Not for me. Not for a video. Just because the weather was nice and people needed a place to breathe. Talia sat beside me on the grass, sketchbook in hand, drawing strangers with a softness most people reserved for friends. I watched her for a long moment, then said, "You think everyone deserves to be seen like this?" She nodded without looking up. "They don't need to earn dignity, Logan. They just need space to keep it." I leaned back on my elbows and looked up through the branches. That same tree. That same sky. Nothing fancy. Nothing framed. But everything I needed. It started with a dinner. One glass of wine. One woman who decided my family didn't belong. But it ended here. On the grass. In peace. With love I didn't have to perform for. And I've never been more grateful that I walked away from a wedding. Because it led me back to something real.